Hi, my name is Lizzie Chan, and I'm a member of the CPR Institute's Young Leaders in Alternative Dispute Resolution Steering Committee. I'm delighted to host today's episode of the CPR Y-ADR Corporate Counsel interview series. The Y-ADR seeks to educate the next generation of leaders in the ADR field on the full spectrum of dispute prevention and resolution techniques, and to provide an insider's view into how CPR's community of in-house counsel, external counsel, and experts in the ADR field are using these techniques to manage conflicts to enable purpose. As part of this goal, I'm hosting this corporate counsel interview series, speaking to in-house counsel and companies all around the world about their experiences with ADR and sharing their career advice for young practitioners in the ADR field. Today, I am delighted to welcome Chantal du Toit, who is a litigator at Shell based in London. Hi, Chantal. We're delighted to have you here today.
Thank you for having me, Lizzie. I'm really pleased to join you.
Can you tell us a bit about your career experience as a disputes lawyer?
So I'm a senior legal counsel in Shell's global litigation team, and I focus on cross-jurisdictional disputes across the EMENA region. Before joining Shell, I spent a number of years in the international arbitration team with Alman Overy and had a wonderful time flitting between their London, Hong Kong, Moscow, and Netherlands offices before finally joining Shell in 2019.
What's your advice for those looking to go in-house?
So as a starting point, I think it's really important to get a breadth of experience because a lot of in-house roles, particularly smaller companies, will ask you to navigate a very broad array of work, whether it's IP, employment, commercial, litigation, etc. I think for those listening who have their eye on a particular sector, it's really helpful to align your experience with that sector. So in my case, for example, I had done a lot of energy and construction work, and that made me ideally suited to applying for a role at Shell. My second tip would be to look for opportunities to do a client secondment. There really is no better way to answer the question, why in-house, than to point to an example and to be able to say, because I did it and it was fantastic. This is something that recruiters really drove home when I was looking to make the move. Now, I don't think you need to do a client secondment at any particular point in your career, and it's certainly not a deal breaker. In fact, for many people who want to do a client secondment, well, it might be as rare as a Percy pig after Brexit, but you do have to then give careful consideration to how you answer the question, why in-house, if you haven't had an opportunity to do the secondment. Finally, I would be amiss not to mention the timings. Some people move in-house at an earlier stage of their careers, some people slightly later on. Personally, I feel like I really benefited from moving at a slightly later phase. So I had a good 5 or 6 years of experience before I made the move. It's certainly given me more confidence to run with projects, to manage senior stakeholders, but more importantly, to have those informed discussions with external counsel when we're discussing litigation issues. So in my view, it's helpful to get a little bit more experience under your belt before moving in-house, but also just to have a chance to start developing your business acumen before you make that move.
What's your advice for external counsel on how to work effectively with in-house counsel?
So that's an important point, and I work extensively with external counsel in my current role, and I would say that I've got 2 top tips. The first one is learn how clients communicate and aim to emulate that in your own work product. Our in-house style is extremely succinct and it's very commercially focused. And as external counsel, you can really help us by ensuring that your advice is clear and concise and well signposted. I'll give you an example. If you send me advice and you include a snappy executive summary in your advice, that's enormously helpful because I can pass that on to my business colleagues very easily. If you don't though, and I have to summarize your advice or I have to translate it to make it more commercially accessible, that is simply one more task on top of an already competing workload. Now, of course, succinct drafting takes time and practice. I believe it was Benjamin Franklin, amongst others, who once observed that I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. But I do think it's a very worthwhile endeavor from where I stand, particularly as a junior lawyer. My second tip for external counsel would be never to underestimate the value of effective horizon scanning. What do I mean by that? I'm talking about helping a client to understand what disputes are coming their way and how they can plan for such events. We operate in a very complex business environment, and it requires us to work very closely with our business colleagues to understand their markets, the challenges that face them on a daily basis. But also, we then, using that information, need to map out potential areas of dispute that are coming their way. And external counsel have a key role to play in this regard. So if I were you, I would be following the industry news or the podcasts, perhaps. I would be setting up an alert on my client's business or on the market. All of this is geared toward being able to share important developments with your clients when those come through. Draw this to their attention. Perhaps even offer to help brainstorm the ways of navigating the issue. And the second point is important because it means that you're not just going to them with a problem, but also a solution.
How does Shell manage its litigation portfolio?
So at Shell, the global litigation is actually set up as a standalone legal function, and we offer support to all of the respective business lines globally. The advantage of that structure is that it lends itself to a much more specialist approach. And it means that we have excellent coverage globally with litigation lawyers in the US and Canada, Asia, Africa, Europe, etc. We have a rigorous early case assessment tool as well, which really helps us to consider at the outset what a dispute is really about, which issues do and do not matter, what are the business objectives. If we take a step back and we look at our tool, when a potential dispute develops, it's normally the business owner who looks at it in the first instance and decides how it can be resolved, if at all possible, on commercial terms with the assistance of those business lawyers. But if it looks like a dispute can't be resolved commercially, we then have a decision tree which dictates whether or not you approach litigation or whether actually it's better handled by a local business lawyer. What the tool also does is to help identify and assess the litigation objectives. And this early investment of time and effort really allows us to pinpoint and clarify those key business objectives and to chart the most effective and shortest way to get there. And I have to say, it really stood the test of time at the beginning of the pandemic when we sought to navigate the myriad of issues that we were suddenly faced with.
I'm really pleased that you've emphasized the importance of early case assessment because this is something very close to CPR's heart. So we've produced resources, including an early case assessment tool to assist our in-house counsel members to identify and assess dispute risks. And it's also crucial to our mission to help companies manage conflict to enable purpose, meaning to take care of their disputes risks so the company can focus on what they do best.
That sounds like a really great initiative, Lizzie.
A really important issue in international arbitration is diversity. And I was wondering, what are your views on that?
So I'm a strong believer that the responsibility to diversify the arbitration community lies just as much with clients as it does with external counsel. It is our responsibility as end users to set our expectations of the arbitral process and to then work closely with external counsel to meet those objectives. Now, of course, part and parcel of that is making sure that the external counsel teams are themselves diverse. Shell has signed the Equal Representation in Arbitration Pledge, and we actually have an internal process that requires us to specifically confirm when making an appointment that we have considered a diverse range of candidates. And I should say that we have in the past and will continue to really challenge external counsel when we receive lists of the same established names that we see again and again. Now, what this also necessarily means is that as clients, we need to embrace candidates with a lesser known track record, even if it's on smaller disputes, if we, I think, are to truly foster a new pipeline of arbitration talent.
I'm really pleased to hear that Shell is a signatory to the Equal Representation Arbitration Pledge, and that Shell is a leader in advancing diversity in international arbitration. My final question for you is, what is your advice for the younger generation of private practitioners in international arbitration?
So that's a great question, Lizzie. I think you need to be intentional in your career from the outset. The arbitration community is incredibly close-knit. It really takes time to build and develop a reputation. And I think there is no excuse not to start at the earliest opportunity available. And that means building your network intentionally, whether it's by attending conferences or publishing articles, or perhaps seeking out speaking opportunities. As many of you will know, it really pays dividends to have a prominent profile in the arbitration community. It reminds me of the opening number to the musical Hamilton, where the scrappy lead singer proclaims that the world is going to know my name. Well, in this case, it's the arbitration community, and it takes a lot of patience and careful career planning, so best to start early. My final point is to be bold in your client interactions. Take the time to build a personal rapport with your clients. Ask them how their weekend was. Invite them for a coffee when they're next in town. I think that you would be really pleasantly surprised by how willing people are to invest and mentor the younger generation of lawyers, if you had only asked.
I can't wait to take you out for a coffee in Hong Kong.
And I look forward to that.
Thank you so much again for your time, Chantal, and for sharing your insights, which I know that the young practitioners watching this interview will really appreciate. And I thank our audience as well for tuning in.
Thanks, Lizzie. It's been a pleasure joining you.